The conversation is about the importance of teaching financial literacy to kids. The hosts discuss the stages of financial education for children and provide examples and tips for parents. They emphasize the need to teach kids about money, saving, investing, budgeting, and the difference between needs and wants. They also discuss the importance of introducing kids to banking and budgeting at a young age. The hosts share personal anecdotes and practical activities that parents can use to teach financial literacy to their children. In this conversation, Ryan and Jim discuss the importance of teaching children about money at different stages of their lives. They cover topics such as basic financial concepts, saving, budgeting, banking, investing, and taxes. They also emphasize the need for parents to lead by example and create a positive money mindset in their children. The conversation concludes with practical tips for parents and examples of financially literate children becoming successful adults.
Welcome to the show where we go deep inside the intersection of finance and the human mind. Jen and Ryan are here to guide. Get ready to explore, let's embark on this ride. Oh, Money Nice and Mystery, where we break it all down. Uncover the secrets, turn our lives around. Secrets, turn our lives around. You tell the truth.
Little off on me, but anyways, trying to do my best to produce and edit and host and all that stuff. For those of you who don't know, we are live, and I am Jim, host of the Money Mindset Mastery podcast, and joining me today, as always, is Ryan Janot. Ryan, how are you today?
No, my name is Johnny Cash, since we're both wearing black today. I'm doing well, and I know lots of parents out there will be excited. They're probably doing their happy dance as their kids go back to school this week. The freedom of the house for a little bit for those who work at home. But obviously the excitement of seeing your kids walk through the door and telling us about their days. And obviously that is leading to today's podcast, as I'm jumping right into it because I'm excited to get started off with it. So
you should be excited because you wrote the blog post.
That is true.
And that's going to be sent out later on this week. But the blog is Building the Future Financial Literacy for Kids. So timing is perfect. Kids are back to school, right?
Yeah. And I think one of the things that a lot of people that we work with, at least for myself, are really struggling to introduce money concepts to their kids. Yeah. And I've had this conversation really for a few years, and joining TVH Financial, it became one of those things of kind of a project to start, make it simple for parents to kind of teach some of the concepts that sometimes is lacking when it comes to whether they're just not comfortable having that conversation, or they don't know it themselves. And then where the education system is, where and how they learn there. It's about learning outside of the education world and allowing us to teach our kids some of these important things. And financial literacy for kids is an important thing, especially as a dad. That also did a dance to have my son come home today, finally on a yeah.
Well, before we dig deep into this, I want to actually send out a bit of a shout out to Jacob and Caleb. So when I was on vacation earlier this year, last month with family, Leah, my 15-year-old, we were talking about, I don't know what the topic was, but at the end of it, he looked at me and said, "Well, Dad, you own your own business and you have your own podcast." And I'm like, "Yeah." And I thought at first he was kind of like making fun of me, as a 15-year-old boy typically would, right? And he's like, "Well, actually, I have a couple of friends of mine, Jacob and Caleb, who listen." I'm like, "Really?" And I'm like, and again, I thought he was kind of teasing me because, I like to tease, and apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. And he's like, no, like they listen because they want to learn about money, and they get inspired by listening to your podcast. So I thought, that's fantastic. We'd love to get this out to a lot more kids as well, because we're not overly technical, right? With our conversations, it's real world stuff that we're talking about. We don't expect for everyone to come and call us, but if if a couple of the younger ones learn a little bit about money and they kind of start way ahead of the game, a lot sooner than we probably ever did, that's fantastic. So perfect timing, blog post, the recording, everything. We should get going. What do you think?
Well, I know I want this to be a live dialogue for a lot of parents, a lot of kids and teenagers out there about what they're doing to help grow their literacy knowledge and and what kind of activities, what kind of books that they see. I'm going to make reference possibly to some of the books because I know we don't may or may not be able to do that, but please feel free to reach out to see if there's any other books or activities that I've used and told other clients or clients have shared with me that seems to work, because every person learns differently. So it's not written in stone. Like I said, I want this to be a live blog discussion document that's out there to really help young adults for that matter, relearn some of these concepts that may be forgotten, how to really speak the love language of money.
Yeah, and for those of you that are watching or listening live, if there is a chat feature in the social media platform, so we're streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, you can go ahead and actually send a question through the chat feature within those social media platforms. We will get on our end and we'll do our best to answer some of those questions. And another reason why I think I like this topic is I remember earlier this year, Ron, you and I, we did an episode. It was about financial planning, I believe, and talked about another example with my daughter, Serena, who she was offered last year in the summertime a full-time job, but it was a cash position. It was all under the table, and she was going to jump for it, and she asked for my opinion. And of course, I had said, probably not a good idea. And she asked me why, and I said, well, we're all living in this system, this financial system, and things have to work a certain way. And one of the things that you're going to require, it's the reality of the system that we're in now, is credit. In order to qualify for credit, you need to have verifiable income. When you're getting paid cash under the table, yeah, you're not paying taxes, but you also can't verify income when you're ready to submit a credit application. And I had a couple of clients of mine, some of them were teachers actually, who they listened to that episode and they commented, they said, we never even considered that. We never even thought that, but it's so true. So they've encouraged their kids now to get part-time jobs that, are T4 based, so they have verifiable income. So let's get going, Ryan. Let's talk about your blog. We're not going to give it all away today, obviously. We are going to send out the blog post later this week, early next week. But let's get going. So the first thing, obviously, is why is it important for kids to learn financial literacy? When we say kids, we're even saying, under the age of 10 potentially as well, right?
Yeah. Really, it's the basic understanding about how money works. And sometimes I walk into client meetings, we talk about cash flow too. And I ask people, money is. And for a lot of parents, they have a very negative feeling about money. So trauma towards money. So money is evil, money is dirty, things like that. So we want kids to understand how money works and understand how money works. It will help project future earnings. And from that, it's the basic concepts of what is the difference between saving and investing? What is your spending habits? How to create a small goal budget for an item. And really, this is creating the foundation for future habits, and in particular your financial habits and the decisions you're going to make later on in life as an adult. When you move on from teenager to university to starting a family to even into retirement. So all these are about compounding years and years and taking and layering in. And that's kind of the key reason why I wanted to start this dialogue with people and start the blog. And that's why it's so important for children to understand these things as early as really. And in my blog, I break down from age 3 to 5, from 6 to 8 or 6 to 10. At each level, you're introducing different concepts to them and how we can use games and books and just general conversation like this ongoing live blog to help build a format in which people can share.
And it gives kids some context too. I was recently talking to, I think, one of our business partners and sharing how when I was a kid, I would leave the lights on everywhere. My dad would yell all the time, like, turn off the lights. If you're not in the room, turn off the lights. And, it's expensive and whatever else. But as a kid, I didn't really understand what that meant until I became a dad and I owned a home and I was actually paying the electrical bill. Mm-hmm. There was some context all of a sudden, so one of the things that I like to do with my kids is provide them that context to just say, well, it's expensive. They don't really understand what that means because they're not comparing it to anything in their real world. Right. Yeah. So I think that's really important if there is a tip that we're going to give off the bat. I think context is a big one. And I still remember Serena, she would have been, I think, 6 or 7. She sold some of her toys and made $20. And she was so excited. And I'm like, oh, give me $5. And she looked at me, she's like, why? I'm like, tax. She's like, well, what's that? And I tried to explain it to her. And she looked at me all angrily. She's like, well, that's not fair. I know. So you just start to give them some of these little nuggets along the way to give them some context so they actually have a better understanding of how money works.
Yeah. Well, taking kids through the understanding of how money works. So I saw this example, which was this woman, a young teenager, kind of walking through the understanding of money, which was, here's this company that, you get your check for $500, right? And in that $500, you're going to pay tax on that $500. Meanwhile, the company's already also paid tax on that $500. And then with your money, what's left of it after taxes, you're going to go potentially buy something with that. So you buy, $100 pair of shoes. Well, you pay tax on that $100 of shoes, and the company that you bought it from also charges gets charged for tax. So you're just constantly paying taxes down the road and drawing out so kids or young adults especially can understand that at every level somebody is reaching into our pockets and taking from that. And when you draw it out, it's a real eye-opener for kids, and taking people through, your kids or family members or business partners, through the idea of what it costs for the lights. And we can start talking about cash flow, cash in, cash out, and what it looks like on a business level, what it looks like on a household level. And for a lot of parents, it may be something to start introducing and understanding for the kids, that it's just not this free flow of money coming in the door, but how this money moves out of the household too. And we're often scared to have that conversation because we don't think our children will grasp the concept, but you'll be surprised that our kids will surprise and truly understand what we're talking about if we find the right context to be able to talk to them about it. So
yeah. Another quick example. While on vacation, we were away, and obviously you go to a touristy place, things are a lot more expensive than your normal restaurant, for example. And my son ordered a hamburger and fries, and it was a $25 meal. Mm-hmm. And he ate all of his fries, and he ate half of his burger. And he's like, yeah, I'm done. I'm going to throw this out. I looked at him, and I said, well, teaching moment, you're throwing away $12.50. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, that's a $25 meal. He's like, well, I ate the fries. I'm like, the fries are like pennies. Like the real cost on that plate was the hamburger, and you're literally throwing away $12.50. So then I started to eat a little bit more of the burger, and I'm like, well, wait a second. I'm not saying you should, also overeat. That's not the point that I'm making here. The point that I'm making is, next time, if you're not that hungry and you don't think you can eat what's in front of you, maybe choose something different, because you are literally throwing, well, at that time, my money away. And at some point, it's going to be your money, right? Mm-hmm. So that was another little nugget of a teaching moment for him. And one of my favorite ones was, I think it was 2 years ago, he got himself a little newspaper route. And the first time he accumulated his money, we went to the mall. And he's a clothes guy. He likes clothes and shoes. So he went around, shopped around, and got himself a whole bunch of clothes and some shoes and stuff. We're walking in the mall, and I have my arm on his shoulder. I'm like, hey, doesn't it feel great? Like, you're able to buy this stuff. You worked hard. It took you a month to get the money. You collected the money, and you were able to go and buy your own stuff. And he looked at me and goes, no, it doesn't feel good. I'm like, what do you mean? And he goes, it felt better when you paid for this. Like, true, right? But what started to happen with him when we would go clothes shopping, that he was now paying for his own clothes, well, he would have his calculator with him on his phone, and he'd see something for $80, and he'd see how much money he had cash, and he's like, well, I got to add the tax on that. So he would add the HST. And he's like, okay, well, this is how much money I need to have. There are other times where he might have been short $50, and he's like, hey, Dad, can you cover this for me until I get paid in a couple of weeks? I'm like, nope, that's credit. And this is how credit works. So either you have the money now, and it's not that people shouldn't have credit, but I wanted to first teach them about working and having enough to buy for stuff. Eventually, we're going to talk about credit and all those things, because again, it's a system that we live in. But these are just little nuggets along the way that I was able to teach them. Yeah. So let's get back into the blog itself. So the stages of financial education. So you actually kind of outline what the stages are.
Yeah.
So the first one is you have from age 3 to 5, introduction to money. So talk a little bit about that.
So again, it's the recognition of what money is, because nowadays we're becoming very like transactional, like tapping our cards. So kids don't see that money flowing in and out. So having kids understand what money looks like, touching it, feeling it, understanding what it's used for, the ability to buy and purchase things. And I think one of the biggest ones too, especially in our kind of social media world of needs and wants, and this like glamorous world that's out there of people with fancy cars and big houses. I read a thing today that showed something about 85% of those are all fake accounts, that they're driving this through the visual of our kids and young people, that it's all fake, right? So if you haven't figured that out, not everything on social media is real. So, but differentiating between needs and wants and having that conversation. What is a need and what is a want? And whether, a need is, being able to put a roof over your head, food, clothing, things like that. But a want is often those bigger things, often things that we would like to say, set a goal for and save up for, as you did an example with your son. And I do remember saving my Canadian Tire money and piggy bank to buy my first bike, right? That bike was immaculate for as long as I can remember. And I think it still may be in my parents' garage, probably immaculate. So, but those are interesting conversations, because I'm sure most parents have had this when they're walking through the grocery store and their young one wants that candy or chocolate bar where they're standing. And even at a young age, for them to understand whether that's something they really absolutely need right now, or if it's simply a want. So, and again, some activities and fun things are just playing with coins and identifying what the different coins are and dollar bills, playing store, and just having those needs and wants conversations is just a simple introduction for money at the age of 3 to 5. So, those kids are exploring. Their eyes are wide open. They're taking everything in. So, and then the next age, I kind of break it down as, unless there's something you wanted to add.
I was just going to say quickly, you and I have kind of had some back and forth on this topic, but there is definitely the huge difference between a need and a want. But there's nothing wrong with wanting something. But if you do it in such a way that it puts you in financial jeopardy, that's wrong. So if you want the Ferrari and you're making millions of dollars and you can afford the Ferrari, nothing wrong with that, because you don't need a Ferrari. You can get away with a bicycle. But if you can afford it and that's what you want, nothing wrong with that. Where people get themselves in trouble is when they want something yet they can't afford it and they get themselves in financial trouble. And just a quick kind of side note on how I used to do things, and in terms of increasing my revenues. And this might be a little bit different than how most people do it, but I've always been a car guy. That's maybe why I reference a Ferrari, for example, because I do want a Ferrari, but I don't need a Ferrari and I can't afford a Ferrari. However, what I would do as I was growing in my business was, if there was a car that I really, really wanted, not needed, and I would get it if it was just a little bit out of my range, because what it allowed me to do was actually do what I needed to do to then eventually afford it, right? So yeah. I wouldn't go from a $10,000 used car to a $100,000 BMW. I wouldn't do that, but I would just it was just slightly out of my reach. That's what I would get, and then it would help me. That was my goal. It wasn't a dollar value. A lot of people set goals and it's a dollar amount. For me, it was more of, no, this is what I would really like. Slightly out of my reach, never in a situation where I would be in major financial trouble, because as an advisor, that would not be a good thing. And it would kind of like push me to get to that point. But people deal with those goals very differently, right? Yeah. So let's talk about age 6 to 10. That's the next one, right?
Yeah. So basic money management. Key concepts are really understanding the difference between saving, investing, budgeting, cash flow, the ability to earn money. This is kind of the stage that I'm at with my son, is knowing that he can earn money through different things. And I'm not saying, there's a lot of conversation. I've read lots of blogs about, should I pay my child for chores? That's your own thing. Chores within the house for me is like a no-go. Things that are outside.
I'm the same way.
Things that are outside. And again, I'd love to hear what other people think about that, right? So, yeah. But it gives kids that responsibility of being able to save some or budget to reach a goal, and that idea of earning money. And again, that conversation for us is as parents is that, we're making money to earn towards something, whether it's paying for the lights, the mortgage, the car, paying off student debt, whatever it may be. But introducing some of those things and some of those activities I've used with Walker is like a savings jar, savings investment jar, setting up an allowance or a budget so he understands if he wants to save for something, he needs to budget down the road if it's something bigger. And then, earning through chores outside the house, in my opinion, but that's mine, and I'd love to hear what other people have. I saw a great example. Somebody was talking about the way for their kids to earn money was to read books, but it was books about learning. So they had to learn about a person or they had to learn about an idea, and that's how they earned money through their family. And I found that actually quite fascinating, which I may actually implement myself at some point. Mm-hmm. So yeah, those basic money management tools are the next layer that I would say you would start introducing to your children around this age. Again, if you spend the right amount of time and introduce, you could even start a little bit earlier for kids. So yeah,
for sure. Now the next one you have here is from ages 11 to 13, Introduction to Banking and Budgeting.
Yeah. So and again, I would go back to the cash flow cash flow planning is, yes, the introduction to the bank. So I was probably 8 or 9 when my uncle, I believe, was actually the one who opened up my first bank account and put a little bit of money in. And of course, to age ourselves, for those who had the little bank books, you'd go to the machine and it would spit out what was in your bank and what the interest was that you had gained on that. But it's a good time to introduce opening of a bank account for your child and understanding how interest works and how budgeting and cash flow works coinciding. So, and speaking of interest, there was a great quote, of course, some of you may have heard of Albert Einstein. Interest is known as the eighth wonder of the world. And it is interesting.
Compound interest.
Sorry,
compound interest. Yeah.
Compound interest. Correct. Thank you. Is the eighth wonder of the world, and showing some of those concepts to kids at an early age for them to explore how money can grow with time. So, yeah. So again, as far as activities, taking your child down to the bank and going through the process of opening up an account with them, seeing what kind of things that they want to purchase and starting little budgeting goals and activities of how they can get towards that goal. And then again, we just talked about interests and understanding compound interest and just showing them and demonstrating over time how those, and there's lots of great resources online to use to see how by putting $10 away, every week or $25 a week, how that can compound, especially in the early years over time. So, yeah.
Question for you, and maybe I have a different opinion on this one. You'd said about taking your child to the bank and opening an account at the bank branch. Why do you think that's important? Because I don't think it is, but why do you think it's important?
I think for me, it's the importance of doing the activity or doing the action. Of course, you could probably just as well do it online nowadays as simply, but I think for me, it's just like an old school way of just going and physically going down to the bank, seeing where some money is held, understanding that there's lots of people coming and going that are looking to take money out or put money back in, how the banks or other companies, institutions are set up. And, there's people in the office and things like that. And it's just allowing your kid to get out and explore the world, that it's something larger than, their house or their school or their sports. For some families, they don't like taking their kids grocery shopping. I love taking my son grocery shopping because he understands he's part of the process. And I think it gives them the responsibility of standing at the desk and talking to the cashier or the teller, but I don't know what they call them now. Sorry.
Who knows? It's changed, yeah.
Yeah, and just, helping them fill out the paperwork and doing kind of a process step by step and them having a voice from the beginning. So I guess that's my reasoning for going to the bank, and it's a road trip, playing music in a road trip.
Yeah, see, for me, I think it's actually more important that they start utilizing the technology that's in place, because that's how they're going to actually do their banking and communicate with the bank. So taking them to the bank branch, in my opinion, it's like, well, you said it. It's old school. It's the old fashioned way of
Yep.
doing it. Branches are shutting down. At some point, there may never really be a branch any longer, right? So for me, it'd be more of I don't want to teach them the old way of doing things because that's dying off and it's not going to be there anymore.
Yeah.
I'd rather teach them the new way of doing things
Yeah.
because that's how they're going to actually transact with these virtual institutions, because I think that's kind of where things are headed, right? So
Yeah.
difference of opinion. I don't think
Yeah.
one is right over the other or wrong, but I would suggest, like my daughter, for example, started university. We didn't have them go through the account or bank account opening process until she got a job. We've had accounts for them. We've done it on our own. But when she got her first job, we're like, well, you're going to need money to be deposited in your account. So she's like, well, how do I open an account? So we went through the process. Now, in her situation, at some point, she was forced to go into the branch because it was an account that we had opened up for her already, and they were just changing names.
Yeah.
And we did that in person. But from then on, I know she would receive her checks, and Serena's like, how do I deposit this? Like, oh, do it on your phone.
Yeah.
What do you mean? And Carol's very much like,
not all banks do that yet, though. That's the thing. Is not all
No.
banks have the scanning app. So
no, but this one did, right?
Yeah.
And if that's the one she was going to be working with, it's like you might as well use their technology. And she does everything pretty much virtually, mostly on her phone, like not even logging in, right? So anyway, it's just difference of opinion. Now, I'm more IT techie guy, and that's kind of my background,
Yes,
and
you
that's
are.
what I prefer. But it's just, for me, it's just like, this is the way of the future. So we might as well teach them the new way as opposed to the old way, because the old way may no longer be around. And then they're going to be,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I guess to add that is for a lot of people, at least for me, my kid is still getting like cash, physical cash, right? So that idea of the only way to do it is, unless there's something I missed on the techie side, is to physically go down to the bank and deposit the money into the bank. And then I would add to what you just said, which is the next step would be to leave the bank and go home and log on to their account and show them the virtual world of that. So so great combination of understanding both sides and making sure that there's many ways to make sure that our children are learning. And sometimes I think my son's better at a computer than me already at his age. So.
Right. Well, if anyone's listening live, we would actually like to hear what you prefer. If you think that they should be doing the new way, or if they should be doing the old way, or a combination of the two. And if you're listening to this post live, and this is in the recording, in the comment section, just please, we'd love to hear your opinion and maybe some of the things that you're currently doing with your kids as well. So very good, very important.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So let's talk about 14 to 18. Now we're talking about advanced financial concepts. So explain that.
So obviously credit cards, that would be a big one, and understanding even how does your credit rating work. Investing, taking the next level about what investing is, really breaking down, I guess, the difference between a mutual fund and a stock and a segregated fund. And that there's a world of different types of investments that you can make, not just what a banking institution is making, but there's more than that. And if there's something that we can introduce, we'd love to talk about that too, and how your money can work in different ways through investing. And what investing is it's about buying assets, right? Things that are going to make you money. And then introducing taxes. Again, we talked about at the start of that concept of how taxes work, and the government loves their piece along the way. Well, how do we minimize taxes, right? And how do we take the steps at a younger age to make sure that we truly understand making those taxes work for us instead of against us? And then, again, repetitiveness is compound in just the rule of 72. Jim, what's the rule of 72?
I'll ask ChatGPT, but no. Basically, there's a division.
Yeah.
Right? There's a math calculation. Bottom line is, I know if you're earning a 7% annual return, your money will double every 10 years.
Yeah.
If you're earning only 6% average, it's going to take longer than 10 years. If you're earning 8%, it's going to be less than 10 years.
Yeah.
So I don't know the actual formula.
Well, you're bang on.
But bottom line is, how long will it take for you to double your money?
Exactly. So you take the interest rate that you're getting.
Yeah.
And divide it by 72, and that gives you the number of years it will take.
Right.
And for a lot of banks that are giving their high interest savings account at half a percentage point,
Now
You know,
they are. Yeah.
yeah, you know, it'll take 139 years for your $100 to double, right?
Isn't it amazing how they were offering these introductory offers at 5-6%, and then they drop off after 3-4 months, and all of a sudden they're paying people 0.5%,
Yeah.
and yet interest rates haven't really come down that quickly.
Yeah.
I just love that.
So some of those things are interesting to know where to invest your money, especially at a young age, right? Like when you're young, take lots of risk. You have nothing to worry about. You don't have children.
If you're investing for the future,
well,
right?
again,
If you're looking to buy a home in 5-10 years, maybe don't take lots of risk, right? So that's something we teach kids as well, along with clients, right?
Yeah.
There is a difference between savings and investing.
So here's something that wasn't even included that we should add. I'll add to the blog, which is like understanding your risk profile, right? And how that applies to the investment side of things. That if you have a shorter term in which you're investing in a goal, that you're not going to take a whole lot of risk, right? But if your goal is very long term, over 10 years, for young people, 30 days is long term in some instances, but depending on what that is. And that's how the world of investing kind of works, of making sure that you're not investing beyond your means or comfort level to make sure that you're getting what you want. So again, some of those activities, playing investing games, I'm really excited because obviously, people have played, what are some games like Monopoly and
I love Monopoly.
What's the other one? Game of Life. Great introduction. There's another game that I love that I haven't played in a few years called The Rat Race. If you've never heard about it, look into it.
I'm living it.
Yeah. So, and that game takes Monopoly and Game of Life to a whole new level and gives people real life. And there's actually clubs probably in everybody's area. People meet up and play this game, which
Really?
actually, now that I'm talking about it, I should probably go join one of those clubs, just have fun and play it. And take my son, because I've been to them years ago and I've seen kids 10 years old come and play. And it's so funny to watch a 10-year-old beat like a 50-year-old banker in this game. It gets pretty heated. So,
It does.
But again, when a kid is on the cusp of earning money, again, that basic tax preparation, how to do your taxes, because it's relatively easy early on for the most part. So those are some of the concepts that are in, and it's, as I said, as we just discussed, and I want to add, which is just keep adding on to the things that you feel that are right for your kids at that time. This is just a basic guideline for a lot of people based on kids' development.
And we're going to talk about practical tips for parents. I definitely would say that one of the biggest tips would be is lead by example, right? I think that's a big one. Because it's like my dad used to yell at me, telling me I'm not allowed to ever smoke a cigarette ever in my life, as he's puffing away on his 25th cigarette of the day, right? Doesn't really have the same impact as my uncle who didn't smoke, and I'd follow him, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, he's actually walking the walk, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big one, I think, is lead by example is an important one. I also think the context, giving them some backup information so they understand, again, just to say that that's too expensive or that's too wasteful, they don't understand that, right? So give them some context behind some of those words, right? So they truly learn and understand.
Yeah. Yeah. And, obviously how to start a conversation with your child, obviously starting is the best thing, right? And as we said, between, our blog, the podcast that we're doing right now, reach out to us if you're struggling with that conversation, or have them part of the conversation when we're meeting, and we can help support you in that conversation with your children. And then you kind of touched upon it, but creating that really positive mindset. We talked about behaviors and creating habits, but having a positive money mindset at home really goes a long way when it comes to your child's belief in their own development of surrounding money. Because as you said, if things are looked at as too expensive or I can't afford that, instead changing the mindset is, what can we do to get there? Or, what job do we need to do, or what savings do we do? What kind of budget that we need to make to meet that goal, to achieve it? Because that really, again, young kids throughout our whole lives, our mindset is one of the biggest factors when it comes to success or failure, right? So, and that it's really not failure, right? Every failure is a learning opportunity. And the more us as adults and our kids see that is, how do I improve on this?
And
What did I learn from it?
some might say that if you teach them to to have a positive money mindset, then they might end up mastering.
Yes. So perseverance, right?
It's the dad jokes in me. I just can't help it. Sorry. Well, that was one of the clean ones.
There's a really great TED talk on grit. It's about perseverance.
Okay.
Highly recommend for families to watch together. So
okay. Well, I know the next one, we talk about some of the long-term impact of, some stories to share about financially literate children becoming successful adults. My kids aren't adults yet, but I can share a couple of examples of where I taught them about investing, for example. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to compare both Serena and Liam. Serena has always been the money hoarder. She doesn't really spend her money. She's probably accumulated hundreds of dollars in gift cards over the years, hasn't spent them. That's just the way she has always been. Liam likes to spend his money before it even hits the palm of his hands. That's the way that he is. And one of the things that we did, so going back to an example of how we teach our kids about money, what we did in our family was anytime they received birthday money or Christmas money, half of it would go to their advisor, which was me, and the other half they can spend on whatever they wanted. We wouldn't question it. We didn't care. They can buy whatever they wanted. And what I would do is over the years, on occasion, I would sit down with each of them and I would say, okay, here's all the money that you've given dad to invest for you. And of course, I had to explain what investing, this is what it's currently worth today. And they would look, and I remember Serena looked at me, she's like, money can make money? I'm like, yeah, it's called investing. Yeah. And again, I kind of simply tried to explain to her how that all worked. She got up, went to her bedroom, came back, and she pulled $200 cash out of her wallet. And she's like, here, I want you to have this. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, well, my $200 isn't making anything in my wallet. But if I give it to you and you invest it for me like you did the other money, then hopefully that'll make money for me. Right? And I'm like, she learned from that. Right? So that was, like, I love that. And then during COVID, we kind of played the what would you do if you won the lottery game, right? And of course, when I started, I'm like, yeah, Lamborghini, Ferrari, probably a Porsche, like that's what I was rhyming off. And we went around and, Serena's like, I'm going to give it all away, charity and whatever else. And then we land on Liam. And he would have been, at this point, 11, maybe 12 years old. And I said, so, bud, what would you do if you won $20 million? And he's like, I'd give it to you. And I'm thinking, oh, man, you're such a good kid. Like, thank you very much. And he's like, no, Dad. Give it to you to invest for me. So then we can make more money from that. He's picked up on it, right? So these are just some examples that you can do with your own kids. It doesn't have to be a lot of money, but to give them the freedom to spend half of whatever without guilt, and to, as long as they save or invest the other half for something in the future. And now I'll be honest with you, in their investment accounts that they've accumulated throughout the years, they have enough money that if they need to go and buy themselves a car to get themselves to school or whatever else, it's there. Yeah. If they need money to supplement their education, it's there, right? We built that up. And the other thing that I will say too is they will appreciate using their own money for these things. When it's just given to them, they're not going to appreciate it. I've had so many friends throughout the years where when they went to college, university, and it was fully paid by the parents, year one, all they were doing is partying and getting drunk and failing. But the ones that actually had to work in order to pay for their schooling, they weren't partying. They weren't doing all those things because they invested in their own education. Absolutely. They knew what that really meant. Right? Yeah. So any closing thoughts, or was there something else you wanted to say before we kind of close things off?
Well, kind of similar to you, like, we do this saving activity, every person can do their own kind of calculation. We do a 70-20-10. 70% goes to investing, 20% he can spend, and 10% goes to charity. So he picks something that he believes in. So about giving back. So all the things about kids and people who save towards something appreciate those things more. It's about there's the Stanford marshmallow experiment about delayed gratification and how This is a 55, 60-year-old study that followed kids about not eating the marshmallow right away, but instead waiting time. Those kids, had higher scores in their SATs, made significantly more money, and were more successful overall. So by implementing some of these little concepts and over time, it can really help to make sure that it's never too early to start.
I agree. So in terms of some closing thoughts, Ryan, here's what I would say. If you are a parent and you're trying to teach your kids about how money works, it might feel a little bit daunting, especially if you don't really know how money works or you haven't quite figured it out and you're struggling. So I would say connect with us. We have a behavioral cash flow program that we walk our clients through. It does a really good job about understanding about spending behavior, how to control some of that. It's different from budgeting. Budgets are really not designed for long-term goals, or more designed for short-term goals. So we can teach you about how budgeting works for some of those short-term goals. But really, there's a full 12-module educational program that Ryan and I would be able to walk you through our behavioral cash flow program. And then as you learn, these are things that you can then teach your kids and share with your kids. So if you need the education, also, obviously, go to our YouTube channel, because there's a lot of content there that we've recorded over the past with information. Visit our websites at tvhgroup.ca. That'll take you to TVH Financial, where there's some additional educational tools there for you to pick up on. Or just reach out to Ryan or I. We work under this company called TVH Financial, which is part of TVH Group. And if we want to talk about money, we offer mortgage solutions. We offer accounting solutions. Hey, there's even legal solutions there from an estate planning point of view. That's really important. Ryan and I are there to help you with the cash flow piece. We offer insurance. Like, that's a big one. Kids won't really understand that, but it's something that they should understand at a younger age. I don't know, Ryan, I don't know with you, but I've had so many clients in their mid-70s who would say to me, I wish I got insurance when I was much younger. Mm-hmm. I wish I got it when I was in my 20s. Or I wish I started saving even $25 a month when I was in my 20s. I'd be so much further ahead. So these are things that we can help you with. And then finally, the money management side. Guess what? We offer that as well through our relationship with TVH Wealth.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we really empower ourselves, empower our kids for the next generation to be a lot more money savvy than we are, and not expect the government in any way or banking institution to really support us, but that we can make actual smart financial decisions along the way. And in the end, keep listening to our podcast and make a simple phone call and see where it goes.
Yeah. Well, we can be reached 647-727-4668. As I mentioned, tvhgroup.ca. Look us up on our social media platforms. We're out there. We even have a TikTok account, but there's no TikTok dancing as of yet. Anyways, Ryan, I think we will wrap things up for now. I'd love to thank everyone who's listened and watched. Again, this will be as part of our podcast and YouTube episode as well. So if you missed it live, just go to our social media platforms and you'll be able to listen to it there. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Ryan. Take care.
Why is it